Like I was saying, he's the king of the nerds. The other nerds, shut down. Dude with a hammer, it's going to beat the applesauce out of him.
My one weakness, bullies!
Welcome to Monsters and Monster Class, your Dungeons & Dragons fix. I'm Eliotti.
I'm Jared Bornicle.
And I'm Will Meldon.
And on this episode, we are taking a look at Vecna, the new statblock and lore released for 5th edition off of Stranger Things. And I say new to 5th edition. Vecna's been around for a very long time in D&D, but we're being timely. That's about it. It's like, oh, here's this cool new thing people are excited about. We should talk about it.
And when we're being timely, we like to stack that up so that the algorithm brings us joy. And today, you all get to win in a dice giveaway. And when I say you all, I mean like one person. So if you'd like to enter in for a giveaway from our friends at Metallic Dice Games, you can get a dice set from them. Leave a comment on the YouTube video and also like, subscribe, all of those things. But I'm sure I'll say that at the end of the video when no one's listening. So with that, Will, you want to talk to us about Vecna?
I'd love to talk to you about Vecna. Vecna is, somewhat retrospectively, I think, the most powerful Lich in all of Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah. I don't know if he was always that, but he is now. Originally, he was a pair of magic items, of all things. The Eye and the Hand of Vechna. It was a great way to trap your players into accidentally becoming evil because they had great powers, but they required great sacrifice. They fleshed him out into a kind of edgy backstory where he was this lowly hedge wizard who, helped his mom when the wizards looked down on him and he discovered all this evil stuff. And then eventually the voices started telling him, you're meant for more than this, Vecna. And so he killed them all and became the grand ruler of some multiversal kingdom. And the head of the story, the real meat of it, is his betrayal by his arch necro-lich paladin, Cass, finally slaying him with the also cool legendary sword of Cass. And that's where we are today.
And the slaying him is where the eyes and the hands came from.
Correct.
Yes.
The only way to get rid of any of these items is to combine them all and cast Wish.
Yeah, which was definitely neat. And I'm sure we'll also be talking about the magic items as we, go along
it's all
here.
Relevant. And real quick, though, the new lore specifically released with the new Vecna dossier. Is that the right word?
Dossier.
That sounds wrong. Dossier. Thank you. That came out. It actually goes on to say that Vecna survived and went on to ascend into godhood in some far-off realm of the multiverse, and that's where he is now. Prior to that, if you read just the lore of the Eye in the Hand of Vecna, it's saying this is all that's left of him. He is now dead. But now they're kind of retconning that and saying no, he survived. He fucked off somewhere, and he's now a god.
Yeah.
Wait a second. Multiverse? A multiverse retcon?
I like how simple it is, though. It's just like, oh yeah, so he hadn't been a god this whole time. Then he was betrayed, and then he was like, wow, this is dumb. I should go be a god, just like that. And there you go. Now he's done. It's all hand waved.
Yeah. So the stat block that we're going to cover here in a second, though, it's specifically just call it out. This is Vecna before he was betrayed. So Correct. This is not God Vecna, because I think a stat block for God is almost kind of silly. Mm-hmm. This is Vecna the Archlich, who's still super powerful, but not a literal god. So stat block is fitting.
Yeah, and this is definitely one of those stat blocks where it's like, even if you kill Vecna, it's like, this is not at all putting an actual end to it. It's just a temporary bind, we'd say. Right. So looking at stat block, we've got a challenge rating 26 creature here, armor class of 18, HP of 272, speed of 30. Then we have for stats, a strength of 14, Dex 16, Con 18, Intelligence 22, Wisdom 24, and Charisma 16. Then we do have some saving throws. Con is plus 12, Int is plus 14, and Wisdom is plus 15. And these skills are just silly, but I love it. Arcana plus 22, History plus 14, Insight 15, and Perception 15. So if there's an Arcana check, I think Vecna is going to succeed on it.
Plus 22, yeah. The lowest he can roll is a 23.
They mentioned in the little campaign they did, it's essentially, the idea is anytime your characters do anything magical, Vecna knows what they're doing. They know the level, they know what they're doing. The DM kind of fudges that, but in this case, there's no reason for him to ever be surprised.
That makes sense, actually. It does.
Yeah.
It leads you into the role playing aspect of it, and you could use the history part as well. This is an obviously intelligent creature. They should know about past events and use that for like how I don't know, should be influenced. If your characters have like a magic item that is particularly powerful, which at these levels you're kind of expecting that. Vecna probably knows the history about that magic item and its weaknesses if it has any, something like that.
Totally, which is really cool. I know this is really nitpicky. But I think his charisma is way too low. Charisma 16.
I think it's the undead aspect. Like you hit a point when you're a bag of bones and flesh or just skin taut over those bones. Like you can only be so charismatic.
So keep in mind, charismatic is not likability. Like we think of it as like the modern day salesperson style thing, but that's not what it is. It's force of personality and presence. And in what the stat block represents Vecna when he was a literal ruler of a emperor of a multi-plane kingdom, empire.
Yeah.
I mean, he has devoted legions of followers and cultists from all over the multiverse who worship him, who desperately want his attention to seek power. To me, that's a 24 charisma.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like,
that's fair.
My level 1 bard has 16 charisma.
He's kind of a nerd.
Ooh, that's actually a pretty fair rebuttal.
Yeah.
He just gets this to this state because he wills it. He's very intelligent, so he knows the right levers to pull, but he doesn't know.
He's more wise than intelligent too, which is
interesting as well.
22 versus 24.
But yeah, I guess that tells me that any progress Vecna has made, it is not out of this like his ability to manipulate people as much as it is just kind of raw power, intelligence, and planning. I don't disagree. I think the charisma should probably be a little bit higher.
At least 20.
Yeah, at least 20. But I think maybe that's what they were going for.
Okay. Like it doesn't really matter that much, but
no.
Then again, he only has +3 to charisma saving throws because he doesn't get a +2 to it between the.
Yeah,
which seems really low. Like he can in theory be banished rather easily.
Probably not as easily as you think. Between the 5 legendary resistances and the ability to counterspell as a reaction, it's not
that's true.
that easy.
Okay, that's all a fair point.
Yeah. Anyways, so we do have some resistances: cold, lightning, and necrotic, which necrotic obviously makes sense for somebody who loves necromancy. And the cold and lightning, I think is that standard for undead, or
I know it's standard.
Does that just come from nowhere? Okay, then that's probably where it came from. Then damage immunities for poison, and then bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical attacks. Then we have some condition immunities for charmed, exhaustion, frightened, paralyzed, poisoned, and stunned. So you're not going to get a hold monster on Vecna. Darn. Has true sight out to 120 feet, and speaks Common, Draconic, Elvish, and Infernal. I will say, with intelligence and the longevity of Vecna, I would expect all languages or some equivalent, just like, probably most languages even. But the idea that Vecna was just like, oh yeah, I learned 4, and I don't know who's got enough time to learn another language, just seems a bit odd. But then we get into the passive abilities. I mentioned this a minute ago. Has legendary resistances, 5 of them a day. So if Vecna fails a saving throw, it can choose to succeed instead. And so, with the expectation of D&D combat lasting, it's supposed to last 3 rounds. A fight with Vecna is going to last more than 3 rounds. But regardless, that is basically 5 rounds that if he failed every single time, could push the fight further and further. It is going to take a lot to burn through those.
For sure.
And then it has some special equipment, which I don't think I've ever seen this tagline before, but Vecna carries a magic dagger named Afterthought. In the hands of anyone other than Vecna, Afterthought is a +2 dagger. And there has to be more lore around this, because being called Afterthought really does make it sound like this thing was just kind of thrown in there at last minute. And
because it's magical effect. So under its actions,
Sure.
there's the Afterthought attack, which we'll get to, but it does lasting damage after you hit.
Sure.
That's
but
why.
like, the name invokes a specific thing when looking at a stat block. It's like, oh yeah, throw in the dagger. Like, what are we going to name it? I don't know. This is an afterthought. Just put something in. So he goes, that's a good idea. Afterthought.
Right.
And then, as mentioned earlier, very, very hard to truly kill. If Vecna is slain, his soul refuses to accept its fate and lives on as a disembodied spirit that fashions a new body for itself after 1d100 years. Vecna's soul can fashion a new body even if its old body was burned to ash or otherwise obliterated. When the new body is complete, Vecna regains all HP and becomes active again. The new body appears anywhere within 100 miles of where Vecna was slain. So probably not your party's problem to deal with if they kill him, but, you can use it for future campaigns.
Right.
And then, of course, because Vecna is undead, has unusual nature, doesn't require air, food, drink, or sleep.
So I'm going to talk about special equipment real quick, because you said you don't think you've seen that, and I don't think I have either, but it makes a lot of sense why it's there. Because time and time again, there's monsters where under actions, they have a named attack where it's clearly referencing a magic item that they have and its effects. And then becomes the big thing. All right, the party killed them. Are they allowed to take that item and use it as the monster did? And usually it's something really, really broken. And I think the Afterthought dagger would be really broken. So I'm glad they start calling it out. Like, yes, Vecna has a magic item. Yes, the party can pick it up. But it's not going to be super cool for them. It's just a +2 dagger.
So
Totally agree.
If you read a lot of campaign books like I do for no productive reason, you'll see this a lot.
When was the last time you DM'd again?
No productive reason, like I said. But
it helps out with the show, I mean.
Yeah, your named characters from the campaigns will often have special equipment and then this kind of thing. And then they'll be like a noble or an assassin or something like that, where it doesn't make sense for that to be in the stat block. So that's why we don't see it often. This is like a campaign specific thing.
Okay.
But yeah, definitely in favor of it. Anytime that it feels more realistic after somebody dies, to be able to take the equipment they had, because it's such a thing people ask. I mean, that's never going away. +2 is a little bit lame. They could have made
there's a very obvious
pared down version.
I mean, +3. Come on, just make it +3.
That's your only gripe. Like, not that it uses any of the cool magic that makes it cool.
It's so easy. You just killed Vecna, the Archlich, and his dagger is like one of the better daggers in the realm.
The campaign's over. Make it a +4. It doesn't matter.
Right.
So getting into the actions, Vecna does have multi-attack. So have a couple of ones to go through. The names probably won't make sense until we go through them, but has a lot of things that he can do in a turn. Vecna uses Flight of the Damned, if available, Rotten Fate, or spellcasting. He then makes 2 attacks with Afterthought. So Afterthought is melee weapon attack +13 to hit, has a reach of 5 feet, and does 1d4 +5 piercing damage plus 2d8 necrotic damage. If the target's a creature, it is afflicted by entropic magic, taking 2d8 necrotic damage at the start of each of its turns. Immediately after taking this damage on its turn, the target can make a DC 20 con saving throw, ending the effect on itself on a success. Until it succeeds on this save, the afflicted target can't regain hit points. So yeah, that'd be a little strong in a player's hands.
Mm-hmm.
But very neat effect. I think the DC is probably at a good level. It's with it being able to make 2 of those a turn, then that means you can put this on 2 different people every turn potentially, and that's
right.
You're basically just trying to make this save every single time. It really will push the players towards buff spells, because Constitution saving throws aren't normally a thing that people have proficiency in. I'm trying to remember which classes have proficiency in con saving throws. I think barbarians, maybe?
Yeah, I think they got strength and con. Sorcerers, I'm pretty sure.
That sounds right. Yeah,
That
and
might
we
be
don't have to
it.
look through all 13 or anything,
Yeah.
but it's not terribly common or anything.
No.
It's not even like dexterity where some classes have some ways around it to make it easier, whatever. So it could very much see, the cleric needs to hold bless, even though they want to hold on to a more important concentration spell. If everyone keeps failing this every turn, that's going to hurt pretty bad. Mainly because of the can't regain HP aspect. If you go to 0 with this, then you're dead.
Yeah, which is very scary. It feels a little weird to me, though. Like, so Vecna, the Archlich, he has the history of being a super powerful wizard, and that's who he is. And one of the main components of the fight is him coming up to you and hitting you with a dagger.
I think you're putting more thought into it. It's more of an afterthought. Because he still can do his spell casting, his Rotten Fate, or his Flight of the Damned. He can do any of these three things. It's then ending the turn with these 2 dagger swipes. So to me,
It feels silly. It does. It just feels weird because he needs to be within 5 feet. He then can teleport away, which we'll get to as a bonus action, a vile teleport, which is cool. Which he'd probably use a lot. So it's probably be, we use the spell casting, come up to somebody, swipe them twice with a dagger, teleport, dagger, and then teleport away. So like, I see how it's supposed to play out, and that can make for an interesting fight and hard to deal with, especially the details of vile teleport, which again we'll get to. But for the flavor of like the ultimate wizard, the arch lich, and like him hitting you with a dagger is like a huge component of his turn, just feels weird. Like, I think it would almost be better if it was just like a ranged spell attack. He shoots bolts of entropic energy at you from 60 feet away, and then it's the same thing.
That's fair. It would definitely make it feel more spelly.
Yeah.
And you could have something, and this would help with the flavor of it just being a +2 dagger afterwards, that it does seem like when he takes a swing, it becomes imbued with magical energy with the entropic magic. That's not fixing what you're saying at all. It's just adding some flavor to it. It's a little bit odd. I'm glad that it's not a ranged attack, because this is a difficult enough fight. So
I mean, but it should be. It's
yes,
Vecna the Archlich.
You're right. Let me rephrase that. Your melee characters are going to have a hard enough time doing anything in this fight.
Okay.
So giving Vecna a reason to not just stay in the back and create a globe of invulnerability and just, can you shoot spells out of there? I always forget.
I think you can.
From outside. Yeah, okay. So Vecna, throws a globe of invulnerability and just throws spells and teleports away when they get too close or something. Give them a reason to kind of be up in the fight. And while I agree with the flavor aspect, I think it makes for a really cool image. Just the idea of him, casting spells, running around, getting up right in your face and basically not being afraid. It makes it more intimidating, because him coming right up next to you is like, maybe as the paladin, you're like, oh, I got this. It's fine. He's undead. I'm going to just blast him with a smite. And then he just absolutely destroys you with a dagger that now continues to hurt you every turn.
Right. And then teleport away.
Yeah, and then teleport away.
And regain hit points when they do.
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess I would need to see how that plays out. I don't have too much, what's what I'm looking for? I'm not very rooted in the history of Vecna. So like, while yes, okay, he's supposed to be a lich and a wizard and everything, I'm not like, oh, having a dagger even just ruins the image I have of Vecna. I don't really have an image of Vecna. So the image to me is he's got a dagger, he swings it, he's pretty good at it, and it's cool.
Right.
Next is then Flight of the Damned, which is a recharge ability of 5 to 6. So Vecna conjures a torrent of flying spectral entities that fill a 120-foot cone and pass through all creatures in that area before dissipating. Each creature in that area must make a DC 22 con saving throw. On a failed save, the creature takes 8d8 necrotic damage and is frightened of Vecna for 1 minute. On a successful save, the creature takes half as much damage and isn't frightened. A frightened creature can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on itself on a success.
Awesome. And a 120-foot cone is a huge area. And of his ability to teleport and stuff, he could very well easily position himself to get the entire party in that every time it comes up.
Yeah, and I
that's
would
a lot
kind
of
of,
damage.
since it doesn't say like creatures that Vecna wants to affect, it would be assumed that anything in the cone fills a 120-foot cone. One thing that is a little bit awkward to me is that Vecna is only resistant to necrotic damage, so officially he can hurt himself in this. So like that's part of the thing you have to work around as a DM.
No, I mean, the cones originate from the caster, so
It's not a spell. It just said he conjures a torrent of flying
fill a
spell that
120-foot cone and pass through it.
Correct. It doesn't say a cone originating from Vecna.
I think that's implied.
That's weird.
Maybe it should, or maybe I'm reading it wrong. It's not a spell, so I don't assume it originates from, or it doesn't need to originate.
I guess
from.
I assume it does originate from him.
Okay,
especially because like they say 120-foot cone, and there's that little gnome in the player handbook that has the chalkboard.
The gnome.
Yeah. Yes, we reference that gnome a lot.
Can you put the gnome up on the screen right now?
Yeah, I will. Gnome. Yeah, okay. And that's I kind of see that as like a keyword thing.
Sure,
a square, a cube, a cone, a sphere. And it kind of shows you how those things originate.
Okay.
And cone, and when it's a spell, at least it definitely originate from the caster.
Okay, that makes sense.
I wouldn't. I think it would be weird to do this different, because then what's the range on it? Where can he put the cone?
Yeah,
like
that's a good point.
Origins of the cone.
I think that's the simplest answer here is just it originates from Vecna. And
sorry, I am actively fighting off my cat during this. I'm sorry, that's a distraction. I've been gone for a week, and he has been all over me.
And then if you have like I guess one thing I was trying to think as well is like if Vecna has minions in this fight, if they're going to be immune to necrotic damage, or does Vecna have the ability to just wipe out all of his army more or less? And for zombies, which just quickly looked up, they're only immune to poison, or maybe even resistant. I didn't look that much. I saw it wasn't necrotic. Damage immunity to poison. So it's not like all undead are just kind of by default immune to necrotic.
A lot of them are, though.
So that's, again, something to probably keep in mind is when you're choosing minions, though has a couple of ways to specifically get zombies and skeletons. So a little bit awkward.
Yeah.
It'd be like, basically spends his turn casting the spell Animate Dead, brings up some zombies, throws them at the party, and then casts his Flight of the Damned, and then just kills the zombie he just brought out. Like, okay, well, could have been done better.
Yeah. Are skeletons?
Skeletons, it's just
are not.
Yeah. Damage, vulnerability to poison, immunity, vulnerability to bludgeoning, immune to poison.
Right.
So otherwise, I mean, the frightened aspect is interesting, and the fact that it's not a spell or something or ability that once you succeed you're then immune to it. You can just keep being frightened of Vecna as long as you keep failing that very high Constitution saving throw.
DC 22, yeah.
So 88 necrotic damage, 120-foot cone. That's going to be rough.
Yep.
But that is not the end of his abilities. This just keeps going. Rotten Fate. Vecna causes necrotic magic to engulf one creature he can see within 120 feet of himself. The target must make a DC 22 Constitution saving throw, taking 8d8 plus 60 necrotic damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. A humanoid killed by this magic rises as a zombie at the start of Vecna's next turn and acts immediately after Vecna in the initiative order. The zombie is under Vecna's control.
And just to specify, the average of 88 plus 60 is 96 damage. This is very easily get up into 120 damage range, one-shotting people.
Yeah, I mean, assuming that the party's level 20 or so.
Yeah, you need to be 20 to fight Vecna, I think.
I think so. It really feels like it. You most likely wouldn't be one shot by that. I don't even think wizards have that low HP at that level.
So 4 times 20, which is the average, is 80. And then let's say they have 2, so that's an additional, I guess it'd be additional 40 health, right? So yeah, that puts him at 120.
Okay, so it's possible to.
Yeah.
It's possible, but it's pretty. Only the squishiest are going to get one hit by this.
Yeah.
Right.
Or
But then
they
almost
get hit
everybody
with-
else will get 2 hit.
Right. Or they get hit by something else first, and then he does this and just kills them. And there's no recharge on this, and this is part of his multi-attack, so he could still do his 2 afterthought attacks and then do this, and that he could do this every single turn.
Yeah, I think that's the part
It's
that
insane.
really gets it out. This isn't a spell.
Yeah.
It cannot be countered in any capacity. It's just
No.
basically 96 damage, again, on average, if they fail. And I feel like that's just, oh my gosh, the first time that this gets brought out and the DM, has their handful of D8s and drops it down and everyone's like, whoa, that's really intense. And they go, okay, so that's 35 plus 60. Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, was that a spell? Is that a once per day ability? No, I get to do it next round. Oh my gosh. So just
Yeah.
pumping out damage here. Then we get into the spell casting because it's not going to stop. And we can definitely see a design change here from more of what you'd expect from the Monsters of the Multiverse, where these aren't a ton of damaging spells. We see more of the abilities and such to change up the battlefield or change up Vecna's abilities to deal with problems, and leaving the damage in the rest of the stat block as attacks as these recharge abilities. So at will we have Animate Dead, which can just be done as an action, where usually it takes a minute to cast.
Yeah.
Detect Magic, Dispel Magic, Fly, Lightning Bolt, which of course is still damage, but then Mage Hand and Prestidigitation. Then we have 2 times a day Dimension Door, Invisibility, Scrying, also as an action instead of 10 minutes. And then Dominate Monster once a day, Globe of Invulnerability once a day, and then Plane Shift once a day.
And self only for plane shift.
Yes. Yeah, that's pretty important.
Yeah.
So, nothing actually too wild for the greatest wizard in the world.
No. Yeah. I was expecting like a wish spell on here.
And
Something Meteor Swarm,
yeah,
crazy stuff like that.
and I think it feels better from like a running it standpoint, but it really does look a bit odd.
Yeah, and then like the inability to upcast Animate Dead or Lightning Bolt is like a little shitty.
Well, yeah, because you're comparing the Lightning Bolt every turn. Again, we can either use Rotten Fate, which does 96 damage on a single creature on average, or can do Lightning Bolt. And if the stars align and everybody's lined up perfectly and Lightning Bolt does well, then yes, it's doing 8d6 damage. But you'd have to hit 3 creatures in order for it to be about equal in damage. So
Right.
probably not going to use that too much. If they're grouped up in any way, you hope that Flight of the Damned is on cooldown or off cooldown, and they can use that.
Yeah.
This is where this redesign actually falls right on its face, in my opinion. Because if you pull up the Lich's spell list, it is a fat spell list, none of which you will ever use. It's a complete waste of time. But it's nice that it's there.
Yeah, and just the ability that upcast spells and things like that.
But like, is it all worthless? Cloud Kill, Disintegrate, I'll say isn't necessary because the Rotten Fate is basically Disintegrate but Constitution. Then we have Power Word Stun, Power Word Kill.
Great stuff on there, but you're reading like at most it's going to be like a third of the list. Like Magic Missile, Shield, that's a big one that I think is missing.
Yeah, that's fair.
Especially for only 18 AC and 272 hit points at challenge rating 26. That's incredibly low.
I would also argue that Magic Missile is something that I have used for high level spellcasters, because when you can throw a 7th level Magic Missile at a party, it does more damage to player characters than, well, it doesn't obviously do more damage to them, but the consistent damage from it is, I guess, has more worth than a character with 300 HP.
Right. It's also good for breaking concentration.
Yes, that's the big use too.
Then again, though, he has at will dispel magic, so that's probably better to do.
Better
level
is,
Assuming
is-
that they manage to cast a spell.
what do you mean? The player casting a spell?
Yeah, that's the implication is that's not likely, as we will see when we get to the reactions.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
You're saying getting a spell off in the first place is hard enough. Breaking concentration, who knows if that's important. Any other thoughts around the spell list? No. Okay, so bonus actions, we have the Vile Teleport. This is the only bonus action. Vecna teleports along with any equipment he is wearing or carrying up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space he can see. He can cause each creature of his choice within 15 feet of his destination space to take 3d6 psychic damage. If at least one creature takes this damage, Vecna regains 80 HP.
Okay, I totally misread this when I first was preparing for this. I thought that was the damage happened where he left.
Oh, nope. Where he goes.
Okay.
So it's a very aggressive teleport.
Yeah, they're really trying to get you to keep Vecna up in the fray, in the fight, not the monster who sits in the back casting spells as minions attack. Because his health is so low for challenge rating 26 that he needs to be regularly regaining that 80 HP.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he's being just blown down really quick.
Yeah, I think that much is interesting because a level 20 character, I really have no grasp of how much damage they can put out in a round. I don't. Like, we just haven't run enough level.
At level 20, the range is absurd.
That's fair.
This is where we get to the oops, we broke the game point of the conversation.
I mean, okay, so let's just take a fighter. Does 4 attacks. They have a great sword. So 2d6 average of 7 damage. Plus 5, so 12. And then they probably have a magic weapon of at least plus 2. So and just maybe some other ways to boost it. So we'll say 15 damage on average attack.
So that's 4, putting it to 60.
60.
And that's
if they have great weapon master.
Don't do action surge. No, we're not. We can't action surge every turn.
You do it when you're fighting Vecna, you're action surging.
Correct, yeah. But we're trying to.
If you walked into this fight without an action surge, you're fired.
So 60 if they have great weapon master, that's up to 100 damage. Yeah, action surge, which I think they have 3 of them at level 20. So I mean, it is not that unreasonable to throw that in there.
No,
we have, assuming they don't even have a subclass, because we're looking at a nuked Vecna out of the gate.
Right.
The issue.
Yeah, they're an action surged battle master with great weapon master
who gets hasted,
and they're adding a D10, D12, whatever onto every. All their attacks just blown through all their battle master dice, maneuver dice.
Well, don't worry, everybody. We have a way for Vecna to deal with this. Vecna's not going to get nuked down on first turn because I'll skip ahead. The reaction Fell Rebuke. In response to being hit by an attack, Vecna utters a fell word, dealing 3d6 necrotic damage to the attacker, and Vecna teleports along with any equipment he's wearing or carrying up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space he can see.
So we can do it once.
Yeah.
And move 30 feet away.
So how many reactions can Vecna get per round? Oh, only one per turn. Wait. Let me read this. Vecna can take up to 3 reactions per round, but only 1 per turn.
Basically, these are his legendary actions. I don't know why they did it like that. It feels a little weird, but
that is odd.
We had this conversation, and I was like really for the idea of multi-reactions. I loved that idea. But
we were talking about that with monks, but still, yeah.
But I mean, yeah, but not in lieu of legendaries.
Vecna's a monk. That's why the wisdom's so high.
Well,
that's why he uses the dagger. He's a bad monk.
He could be an astral arms monk.
Yeah.
Anyways, this is not important. Vecna's not a monk. So you can do that 3 times, basically. The Fell Rebuke, that is.
Right.
So that might neuter the melee fighters first turn. That might neuter a paladin. He's still probably in the danger zone if the barbarians.
Yeah. And even maybe a fighter or a paladin if they have the speed to get there. At level 20, it's not that absurd to think they've somehow increased their speed at that point.
And then if they're a ranged fighter.
Right.
If they're ranged, then he probably wouldn't bother using Fel Rebuke on it in the first place.
Right.
But then, you
for
can
a
talk about like
longbow shot, a
sharpshooter.
sharpshooter, things like that. Yeah, Paladin running up doing 2 level 5 smites on him. And then if they're like Polar Master getting a 3rd one off with the butt of the weapon. Like there's a lot of ways to unload a lot of damage very quickly into Vecna. And he only has 18 armor class, so at level 20, like 18 AC is not that high.
That part I'm struggling with. I'm expecting every single attack to land. And with only an AC of 18 and no shield, then
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I say the bare minimum at that point, and most likely you're going to have a +5 whenever your main attack stack is, and then you're at +6 to your proficiency, so bare minimum +11 to hit, and then most likely it's going to be higher. Things are hitting a lot. I mean, it's not every single attack, obviously. You still roll 1s and 2s, but
I'd say
yeah, God forbid you give
have a
yourself advantage
75%
somehow.
chance.
Like, can he be prone? Yeah, he can
Yes.
be prone. Yeah, like a great weapon master can just trip him. Not a great weapon master, a battle master. I guess he could burn legendary resistances to not be tripped.
Yeah.
How embarrassing would that be to burn a legendary resistance, not to fall over?
So all having this discussion now, though, it explains why his damage is so incredibly high. But I worry that makes for a bit of a dull fight, like a super swingy fight where about initiative matters a lot more. Whereas like Vecna's dying in 2 rounds or the party's dying in 2 rounds, and that's how that fight's going to go. And those are not fun fights.
Yeah. Let's keep both of those in the back of our minds. I want to circle back on both those, but I want to just finish up because we've got one more reaction left to talk about.
Right.
And that is the Dread Counterspell. So this is Vecna utters a dread word to interrupt a creature he can see that is casting a spell. If the spell is 4th level or lower, it fails and has no effect. If it is 5th level or higher, Vecna makes an intelligence check, DC 10 plus the spell level. On a success, the spell fails and has no effect. Whatever the spell's level, the caster takes 3d6 psychic damage if the spell fails. So we've got a counter spell plus some damage coming the caster's way.
Right.
And
that's a really
this
cool
is really
counter spell.
Great. 3 times, this is where it really matters, though, because as a spellcaster, that's the thing you did. That's your entire time, and he can shut it down 3 times. So
yeah, and there's
party's not getting much.
There's no range to it either. If you can see Vecna can do this. That's also the thing is, usually with counterspell, you try to get back 60 feet is, I believe, the range on it, and say, okay, so. they can't counterspell me. I can cast my spell. We cast our buff spell and let's move on, or whatever you're trying to do. Nope, no range limitations here. From 120 feet back, he can counterspell you.
Yep.
And hurt your brain for even trying.
Yeah, as long as he can see you.
And I don't feel like the DC is terribly hard to beat with 10 plus the spell level. So it would have to be 15 at the minimum, and then 19 at the highest would be the DC. He's got plus 6. I guess I wish that he could add his proficiency bonus of +8 to that, but then it would you'd never get spells off. So
yeah.
It's going to be a matter of bringing out your big guns and wasting your high level spell slots. I mean, what this does in my eyes is it takes everything that's 4th and lower spell for the party and basically says you probably won't be able to get that off. Like, just there's no reason you should even look at those spell slots. The spell slots you have are 5th and higher, and even then you've got this 50% chance or whatever that it's going to work.
Right. And then even if you do get through that and the spell goes off, he still has 5 legendary resistances.
Right.
Or +15 to his saving throws.
Yeah, it is interesting because this is one of the few times we're talking about a high-level creature, and we're saying spellcasters probably aren't going to be well off here, but melee attackers may be the stars of the show.
Which is fitting. If somebody knows how to shut down other spellcasters and defend themselves, it would be Vecna.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, he's the king of the nerds. The other nerds, shut down. Dude with a hammer, Gonna beat the applesauce out of him.
My one weakness, bullies. So that is the entirety of the stat block. Did we want to get to the magic items, or I had a couple of, I guess, things I wanted to loop back around in terms of the.
Let's do the looping.
Okay. All right.
And then yeah.
So I guess my thought was around how do we make this not a blowout in terms of the paladin just absolutely nuking this round one. Like if we leave the stat block as it is right now, I think you all have convinced me that it's like very possible. The paladin runs up, makes their attack, keeps running, and then just destroys Vecna with a couple level 5 smites.
I mean, so Vecna definitely wouldn't be alone. In fairness to the stat block, we've been kind of talking Vecna alone in a room with a party.
Right.
Which wouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen.
Right.
Let me just shut you down right there. Because the free level 20 D&D adventure released with the Vecna dossier concludes with you fighting Vecna basically alone in a room.
Oh
no.
Is it like a blank room too?
It's a pretty blank room. There's like zombies in the wall, and the zombies don't do much.
Okay, so we actually read the Vecna dossier part.
Well, the adventure.
The adventure part, yeah. yes. Not just the stat block. So looking at this, it does basically have you fighting Vecna in it's not a totally empty room. It's basically, as Will said, surrounded with an edge of zombies. 80 feet long, 30 feet wide, 60 feet high. The walls are made a mixture of zombies and stone. So there's like not much in the way of the middle being interesting at all, or having any type of minions in any capacity. But that doesn't mean your fight needs to look like that.
Right. Yeah, and also in the adventure, it goes on, like within this inner sanctum, any healing magic's less effective, so only restores half as many hit points, which I feel like doesn't actually impact that much, because that's just 5th edition's kind of balanced around not needing to heal in middle of battle unless someone's down and you're healing them to get them back up to save them from the death saving throws, at which point it doesn't really matter that much if it's 5 points or 10 points.
Yeah, I'd also add when you've got Rotten Fate doing 96 necrotic damage, and if it drops them to 0, they become a zombie.
Yeah, you're not out healing that.
The one question I guess I have is, if it just kills you right out, then just trying to think of some of the order of operations with Rotten Fate. So if somebody gets hit with Rotten Fate, they take the 96 damage, they drop to 0. So they instantly die, is what I'm assuming, right? Because it says a humanoid killed by this magic rises as a zombie. Do they make death saving throws, or do they go straight to death?
It says if they are dropped to 0.
It does not.
Humanoids. Oh.
It says a humanoid killed by this magic rises as a zombie at the start of Vecna's next
It's
turn.
that bullshit again. We got in a big not argument, but a big discussion about this in a recent video as well. I forgot which one.
I'm sure I had the opposite opinion that I'm going to have right now, because that's just how I operate. But to me, they probably would make death saving throws. It's a little bit awkward. And then, like, once you fail all 3, then you will rise up as a zombie.
Right. But then what happens if they fail 1 and then a skeleton comes up and stabs them in the chest for the last 2?
Then next Vex's turn, it rises as a zombie.
It does, even though it was the skeleton stabbing him with a short sword that actually killed him.
That question.
Yeah, it's just kind of sloppily worded.
Yes, I will not disagree. I'm still going to say it's like, because it dropped you to 0, that's what started this.
Yeah.
Almost like you get kind of like a, marked in some fashion, and then if you're dead, this is what's happening.
Doesn't Revivify bring you back with 1 HP?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we're saying. It doesn't even matter. Like, that's the best you can do.
But to be pedantic, it's like the magic is you get half as many hit points. Technically,
to a minimum of 1.
Hit minimum. Okay, all right. There we go.
Yeah, it's like they accounted for your pedanticness.
Let it go, D&D Beyond.
So, if you do need to make this fight more difficult, there are layer actions, which we've kind of been talking about, but to go into all of those, there is shadow play, which is Vecna summons one shadow per character. Each shadow appears within 5 feet of a different character. The shadows follow Vecna's command and last until he uses this layer action again or dies. A shadow acts during initiative count 20 after layer actions have been resolved. So that one alone deals with melee characters to some extent, because now you're draining their strength.
With a challenge rating, what shadow?
One
Challenge
half.
Half, yeah,
shadow?
one half. But that's as long as it hits them, right? So
But it's +4 to hit.
+4 to hit's going to be a hard one. That's
And
the
the
hard
target
part.
strength score is reduced by 1d4. Yeah, there's no save for it or anything.
Yeah. So I'd say this is one of the times where like a shadow is probably okay to throw against a party. This is the
Right.
one time, everyone, at level 20, it's all right to use shadows.
Right.
As a layer action.
Yeah. But that seems kind of fitting where, yeah, okay, the melee party is going to be a problem. Well, if the shadow gets a hit off and it reduces their strength, that starts to make it harder for them to hit Vecna, which means it's less easy to kind of chain those attacks, yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm.
The other layer actions, we have Drain Life, which Vecna casts in Enervation. Here we go. I thought it was in Veneration at first. Enervation at 7th level. Vecna doesn't need to concentrate on the spell, and the spell ends on initiative count 20 on the next round. Does anyone know Enervation off the top of their head?
You
Never
drain
used
all
The
this
the
target
spell.
must make a dexterity saving throw. On a success, the target takes 2d8 necrotic damage and the spell ends. On a failed, the target takes 48 necrotic damage. And until the spell ends, you can use your action on each of your turns to automatically deal 48 necrotic damage to the target. It kind of sounds like a souped up witch bolt. The spell ends if you use your action to do anything else, if the target is ever outside the spell's range, or if the target has total cover. When you cast a spell using a spell slot of 6 or higher, the damage increases 1d8. So it would be 68 necrotic damage.
Okay. And then the important part is whenever the spell deals damage to a target, you regain HP equal to half the amount of necrotic damage the target takes.
So it's basically a drain life because, Vecna doesn't need to concentrate. And since it ends on the next initiative count 20, there's no option for him to use his action to keep it up. So it's just a quick kind of drain life thing.
Makes sense. Good title for it. Drains life.
Yeah. And much needed.
And then we have Mournful Dead as the last one. Wailing spirits swarm from a 20-foot radius sphere centered on a point in the layer that Vecna can see. Each creature in that area must succeed on a DC 18 Wiz saving throw or take 8d6 cold damage and have their movement speed reduced by 15 feet. Creature that succeeds on its saving throw takes half as much damage and doesn't have their movement speed reduced. So another thing to kind of combat melee characters just moving to get around this, reducing the speed by 15 feet is pretty intense.
And 8d6 cold damage is nothing to
that's nothing.
shrug at. Yeah.
No, I'm
That's it.
shrugging at that. I don't care. Shrug.
It's a decent amount for just a free layer action.
Yeah, I agreed. It's a cool ability too. So I just think it's I don't know. All of these are good layer actions.
They are, yeah.
I do still worry. I don't know. My biggest fear is that there's this obsession with moving towards a 3-round combat, every single combat, no matter the combat. And that is just not really how I like to play. We've had those like these big long boss fights that is just like, everybody, you ready for the fight? Because we're starting at 6:30, we're rolling initiative, and we're probably not finishing this until 10. And that is like, that's going to be a good day.
Yeah. When those are saved for the big boss fights, but that's what Vecna is.
No, just a random encounter.
Right?
Yes.
But I'm 100% with you. I love those. The really long, multiple hour set piece boss battles with a lot of moving parts, and it takes you from full to all your resources done and things like that. And yeah, this Vecna fight is not that.
No, it feels like it's trying to be over quick. It's like, well, I don't want to overstay my welcome. And it's like, you're Vecna. That's, you overstay your welcome.
You're right. I mean, that's kind of your whole thing. Like,
right?
You're literally Lich. That's what being a Lich is about, overstaying your welcome.
So,
and even when he died, he still overstayed his welcome between his hands and his eyes, and then got retconned back into nope, secretly didn't actually die.
Yeah, so I don't think he's worried about that.
No. Wizards of the Coast clearly is, though.
So this does still, even with the layer actions, it feels like a 3-round combat, because either Vecna's going to die because your party successfully, rolled well in those 3 rounds, or has, I don't know, done something creative to lock Vecna down and just dish out damage, and then boom, fight's over. Or you have the opposite side of things where they don't roll well, they don't figure out anything, and they die in 3 rounds.
Right.
And I don't want that. I want long slogs that everybody gets out with by the skin of their teeth either side.
Yep. And all of Vecna's big damage is necrotic. So, like, if you find a way to make yourself immune or even resistance, that takes away a lot of his fight.
That's a good point. And one thing that is actually interesting around the setup of this final fight in the Vecna dossier in Vecna's Sanctum is it does specify any spells you have on you 6th level and lower just like dissipate going through this gate, which I thought was kind of cool. So that if there are any spells that just give necrotic resistance, which I feel like there are, but I just don't have all the spell books memorized. I know, shame on me, but I feel like there's some ways to get some necrotic resistance. Probably not going to keep that around if you go through.
So there's not a lot of spells that give resistance or immunity, but there's magic items, potions,
Sure,
class features, things like that do not sound like they would be impacted by that.
Yeah, I guess my question is like, as a DM putting this together, does it feel almost necessary? Like you to pad this out to, well, that sounds like adding fluff, but to make the fight last a little bit longer, if you want that feeling of it's sticking around, overstaying its welcome, then would you almost feel compelled to give ways to have necrotic resistance?
Well, then it's just going to be quick in the other way. If you do that, then you need to buff his health or his AC or both.
Yeah. I guess that's my question. Do you need to? Should you? Probably.
Yes. So what they did with this is a thing we talked about relatively recently with the Nazragon, is the idea of like giving them a weird way to get health back instead of giving them more health. And they did it terribly with the Nazragon with like a full action heal. This is better. Yeah. Bonus action. It's acting like a shield. But the problem is you're still looking at a very dangerous round 1 for Vecna, like almost every time. So that's one of the big issues. The other issue is at this level, like your party might be able to just like drop him instantly in any circumstance. He's just got so little health and so little way to absorb it, because he's not going to be resisting anything they throw at him. Realistically speaking, there's nothing on this list that's like a must have. So the one thing I think that might make sense is the Demi Lich. Assarak's the most famous one, but it's basically this floating jewel-eyed skull that everybody loves to die to. It's the only creature that has damage resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from magic weapons. And it has 80 health at challenge rating 18. It's one of those weird things, but I think this is an example where it might work.
Yeah,
just resistance to magical. Yeah.
Heck, I would probably say resistance to, all non-magical attacks except for all magical attacks. What's what I'm looking for here? All magic weapons aside from that Sword of Cass.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to have Vecna, that
you go and get the Sword of Cass, and he's like, "Yeah, no, I'm pretty resistant to that."
Right.
It didn't seem so when you got carved up and thrown into the multiverse.
It just shows how good Cass was with it. So that could be one thing. I would agree, and that would effectively raise his HP really darn high. But it's also a really interesting way of manipulating the HP, because it's still not resistant to a lot of spell casting, but he has other ways of dealing with spell casting of those different damage types. So it really does directly target melee combatants who can just nuke him down without overly punishing paladins by making him resistant to like radiant damage or something like that, which would just be way too far.
Right.
Then it would just be dumb. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So I like that. I think not just bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. Done. End of statement.
So I worry extending this fight out by doing that, adding more health, higher AC, anything like that's going to make it kind of a boring fight because he actually doesn't have that much up his sleeve. Like I kind of understand after like why they want this to be a 3-4 round fight in either direction, because after 2 rounds you've kind of seen everything he has. He doesn't have 16 spells in level 1 through 9. It's a pretty limited list of spells. A lot of them are out of combat. So he's hitting with his dagger, and then he's either doing the Rotten Fate, which is just going to burn people down really quick, or the Flight of the Damned.
Or he's using Dominate Monster on the Barbarian.
Sure, and he can do that once. So again, that's like, I could see why 3 or 4 rounds, and it's like, okay, he's been played out. There are no more tricks. He's not doing anything else interesting. It's just attrition at this point.
I'm going to give you a little bit of spoiler from the free 20 campaign. There's like a section where if you do a thing wrong and you like fail a 22 saving throw, he secretly casts Dominate Monster on the person who failed that throw. Ooh. And it's not revealed until the fight starts. So there is a kind of a cool thing to do leading up to that. And that might be not a bad idea. Make his lair more interesting.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I feel like there are some more things that can be done. I mean, not that this is like you can say no if you're like, oh, I would never do that. But with invisibility as one of the options, and again, being able to spellcast rather easily, he has things that I feel like, I guess. Okay, I got to put some thoughts together. If he did his Flight of the Damned, that recharge ability, or the Rotten Fate, if he's invisible, would that break invisibility? Because it would not be attacking or casting a spell.
I guess not. The spell ends for a target that attacks or casts a spell. That's all invisibility says.
Right. So going invisible would remove his ability to cast any spells or to do Afterthought or make the Afterthought attacks. But we do still have ways for him to deal damage and to be harder to hit and potentially hide in a fight, letting things like the layer action wear the players down. And I'm not saying that's like, hey, start the fight with that. I guess my point is that can be done 2 rounds in, and now there's an interesting switch. Like, oh, do we have a way to see invisibility? Do we have a way to remove it, to dispel magic on it? Or, oh, it's okay, I tried to dispel it, but he can now use his Dread Counterspell, which isn't a spell, also doesn't break invisibility. So I don't think I agree that this would be a 1-note fight. I think there's a lot you can do with it. I think it's hard to do a lot with it because it's a big old stat block. And I know when I've run giant stat blocks, I try to read them like 6 times. And then I come in with, I'll even write out a plan of the first 4 or 5 turns of what I want to be done. Because it's hard to keep this all straight. And then even after the fight, I'm like, oh, I probably should have done 1 or 2 things differently.
Sure, that makes sense. Just for the sake of discussion, I'm actually not sure what the attack thing, because it doesn't say this spell ends for a target that takes the attack action. It just says attacks, lowercase attacks.
Ugh.
Which is like, kind of messy. And I think the intent is that they would, but it doesn't matter because this isn't balancing it for your players. Like a player turning invisible and like trying to skirt around with subclass abilities. It's fucking Vecna. You're the DM. It's how it works for him. It's fine.
The fact that he doesn't have
to do that, honestly.
Yeah, he should have greater invisibility. That's the long and short of it.
Yeah. Just treat it like that.
Yeah. But having invisibility, does give disadvantage on all attacks against him as well. So that's probably something to keep in mind, is that as long as he's okay with not making that melee attack, which, it's not necessary. I feel like if he doesn't use Afterthought on his turns, it's not like, well, his main thing's taken away. There's plenty for him to do. There's plenty of damage to dish out, and holding on to that invisibility makes it pretty darn useful.
Totally. And there's a whole other aspect of this we need to talk about that could make it more interesting of a fight and a harder fight, and that's the Book of Vile Darkness. So segue into that. I think it's really in terms of using him, the only magic item we need to talk about. Obviously the eye and the hand and the Sword of Kos are related, but it's like he's not going to have those. So I don't know how relevant it is to the discussion. But the Book of Vile Darkness is even actually specifically called out, saying he is kind of a weird flavor, saying a lot of times he just doesn't feel like using it. So he's not going to bother. But if you want it to be a harder fight, have him bother. And then he could use it. The flavor of the Book of Vile Darkness was written, it was very clearly written before this dossier came out, because it goes into the flavor of like, most believe Vecna authored the book, and it's something that could be found out on the material planes somewhere, and it's passed hands from owner to owner, who all add to it and take away and put notes in the margins and change it and stuff like that. Where within the dossier with Vecna, it's very, very clearly like, this is his book. So a little discrepancy there. But basically in his hands, so it has some random properties, 3 minor beneficial properties, 1 major beneficial, 3 minor detrimental, 2 major detrimental. I kind of hate this mechanic.
I can't believe it's stuck around, or that it's even being called to. It's so difficult to keep track of.
It is. Yeah, within the Dungeon Master Guide, within like the Dungeon Master Workshop about building magic items, there's like tables of this stuff. And I don't get why it's so weird, because like things don't balance well together necessarily, and like you said, it's really hard to keep track of, because then, you know, here's this printed sheet, or like here it is in D&D Beyond or whatever, but then you also need to separately write it down and track what these are, and hopefully they don't fuck you over with the balance or make it more powerful than I intended, and things like that.
Yeah, and some of them are really all over the place. So, I mean, they're basically telling the DM to, if you're going to use the Book of Vile Darkness, look through the major and minor benefits and detriments and choose, we've got 4 benefits and 5 detriments. And I'm assuming usually the way it works is the owner of the book, whoever created it, doesn't have the detrimental properties. That's if the party picks it up. Usually, if you look at like the Wand of Orcus, it specifies that Orcus doesn't have the detriments.
Yeah. This doesn't specify that, but that's how I'd play it. I think it'd be very silly if Vecna had the detrimental properties on his own spellbook.
Like every time he's using it, he has to make a saving throw every day, or else he becomes frightened of the shadows. Like, all right, come on.
All right, so ignoring that, that's the hard-coded properties of it. So his adjusted ability score. So first is adjusted ability score. After you spend the requisite amount of time reading and studying the book, one ability score of your choice increases by 2, maximum of 24. And then another of your choice decreases by 2 to a minimum of 3. Can't adjust ability scores again. In this case, if you had Vecna have it, I would just choose to boost a score by 2. Don't know which one, but intelligence would probably make the most sense, because that's what all saves are based off of. But I could also see charisma, because it bugs me.
Just on principle alone.
Right. Then he would have Mark of Darkness if he had this book. So after you spend the requisite amount of time reading and studying the book, which doesn't really acquire to him. Oh, yeah, this doesn't really impact him at all.
It would be a little bit weird if it
really did kind of shoehorn this in, like saying, oh, if you want it harder, here's this magic item that's related to him that he could have. But they didn't rewrite the magic item to make sense for him. The Mark of Darkness is saying once you're like attuned to it, the character has like a Mark of Darkness on you. An evil rune might appear on your face. Your eyes might become glossy black, things like that. It gives you advantage on persuasion checks with evil creatures and advantage on intimidation checks of non.
And that part's fine.
Creatures. Yeah.
Like the flavor of it doesn't make any sense. And you can just throw that out. It's fine. But the advantage on persuasion checks with evil creatures isn't going to come up in combat or anything. But it seems fitting that Vecna is able to do that, and explains why he does not need high charisma.
Right. Sure. Even though it's not in his stat block.
Because he usually has the book, and the book's not a part of his stat block.
Okay.
That's like saying that you don't have the stat block of your car. Well, okay, you have your car all the time, but you're not like actively using it, so we're going to spec it differently.
No, that's fine.
Otherwise you get like plus 2,000 pounds, just like added on. You go to the doctor and they're like, why are you 2,000 plus pounds? Like, sorry, I included my car in the weight. I don't know where I'm going with that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, that's cool. All right. Next, Command Evil. Another one that just seems kind of odd. That's like They really needed to rewrite this if they were leaning on this to make it a harder fight. While you were tuned to the book and holding it, you can use your action to cast Dominate Monster spell on an evil target spell save DC 18. You can only do it once. Vecna gets a free Dominate Monster, and it's not his entire action. It's part of his multi-attack where they cast a spell and then 2 Afterthoughts attacks, but this is an entire action. It's a lower spell save DC. I guess it gives him a second option of doing it because he only has 1 dominated monster in the stat block, but it feels pretty shitty.
Evil targets,
right? Which is no longer being used at all.
Glossed completely over that, right? So
okay, so I'm actually going to speed ahead a little bit here and just say that nothing on here helps the Vecna fight in any capacity beyond what you might get from the major beneficial properties.
Right. Yeah. The rest of it's then. Yeah, out of kind of stuff, Dark Lore and Dark Speech. You learn Dark Speech. And
when you recite it, you take psychic damage. I don't think Vecna's taking the psychic damage.
No. And then you could use the Dark Lore, like, it lets you learn stuff. You could use your intelligence. When you make an intelligence check to recall information, you could double the proficiency bonus if it's related to in there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I almost feel like I missed something with this. And thank you for skipping that because you're right. I was spending too much time on the little details because to get to the point I was trying to make, it doesn't add anything to the book.
No, I was surprised. No, I'm glad you went through it slowly because when I first read this, I was like, okay, yeah, cool. That'd be good to give to Vecna. And no, that doesn't help at all. So maybe you get something from the major and minor beneficial properties.
Yeah, that would probably be it.
But otherwise, I'd ignore
if you look
this.
Through them, they suck too.
That's what I guessed. I was hoping there'd be one that's like raises the AC by +1. And I'd be like, all right, it's all saved. The Book of Vile Darkness gave Vecna +1 AC, so it was fine. But no, nothing, Will?
No, I mean, we're talking like +10 to your walking speed, +2 to a stat. Choose one.
These are the major ones?
That's the major?
Major, yes.
Okay, so he gets one of those.
Deafened, petrified, or stunned. That's useful.
Yeah.
And then some free spell casting.
We can give Vecna spellcasting again.
That was... How did we miss that? He didn't have spellcasting.
Well, of course he doesn't have spellcasting. He doesn't have his book with all of its beneficial properties.
All those evil misdeeds. No, this is like loot. This is loot for the party to get screwed over by when they win the fight.
But there's literally like a little sidebar text box above his stat block. While Vecna always carries the Book of Vile Darkness on his person, in fact, he fashioned his Lich form to encompass the book. He typically has no need to call upon its foul magic in battle. If the DM wishes to run a more challenging and more complex encounter, Vecna may call upon the book's abilities as appropriate. It also says it in the adventure as well.
I know. I don't know why they lied like that. It's just
it doesn't do anything for him.
I don't know. I think that was the real afterthought all along.
Yeah. Yeah, same with that. I really was not initially listening. That's why. That was good. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not as good as my segue for Metallic Dice Games, where you can save 10% on your order using the code MM10. That's a good segue.
Which we're doing a giveaway for, too. So comment below, which we talked about at the beginning.
Yeah.
Is that you cutting me off so we end the episode so it doesn't
go
too long?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. Just
got to do another hour of this. Stick around, everybody.
So, everybody is just checking their phone or their computer screen right now going, is there really another hour left? No.
Probably not, but we are always surprised how long these get. We are at an hour 15 right now, and we mucked about for probably 2-3 minutes before starting, so we're about an hour 10 in.
There are other magic items. I think that's really all we've got left to talk about, right? The Sword of Cass.
And it's not super relevant.
It's not, but I do think it might be used in your game, and it somewhat connected. So, hey, we'll talk about it. And this is not something Vecna would have. This is something that your party would have. And we do have more of these major and minor beneficial properties. But it is a sentient +3 longsword. And it scores critical hits on a 19 or a 20 and deals an extra 2d10 slashing damage to undead. So definitely
You
something
want this
to
fight
keep
to
in
end
mind.
real fast?
Yeah. So yes, it does have, just going through its abilities first, Spirit of Cast. While the sword is on your person, you add a d10 to your initiative at the start of every combat. In addition, when you use an action to attack with the sword, you can transfer some or all of its attack bonus to your AC instead. The adjusted bonus remains in effect until the start of your next turn.
And that is such a cool ability. I love that.
it.
Like, I feel like I don't really see that much, but
I've never seen that before.
right.
It's because
So
it's
that's saying the
horribly
plus 3
busted.
bonus, right? Yeah, because
What'd you say?
We're talking about the plus 3 bonus. That's the amount that you can transfer, correct?
Is it that, or is it
attack
just your plus to
bonus.
attack?
Oh, it
like if
doesn't say.
if you have like plus 15 to attack, is that what it is?
I don't know. It
That
says you can
seems a little
transfer
absurd.
some or all of its attack bonus to your armor class
Okay.
instead. So
That sounds
its
like the
attack
3.
bonus is plus 3.
Yeah.
And that's huge because by the time you have this, you're like in the 95% hit category as like
I thought you were going to say 95
Marshall.
AC category.
But
You
your
got
AC is
95
always
AC.
stuck. Your AC is going to be stuck at, let's say, 18, 19 if you have plus 1 armor. And now it's, 22,
Yeah.
which is
Right.
like the tippy top of armor.
Yes. Bounded accuracy says this very good.
Mm-hmm.
Also lets you cast some spells as an action. Call Lightning, Divine Word, or Finger of Death. Once you use the sword to cast a spell, you can't cast that spell again from it until next dawn. All very strong spells.
Yes.
Say it's 7th level. Call Lightning's 3rd level, so I guess it's a bit of an outlier, but Divine Word is amazing. It does say that DC is 18, so yeah, Divine Word with a DC 18 means you can potentially do all this, like what? Deafen and blinded if they've got HP at a certain level. It's a confusing spell, but
Yeah.
can
7th
do a
level,
lot.
so it doesn't come up a lot. But yeah, basically it's like if it has if a creature has 50 hit points or less and they fail, they're deafened for 1 minute. If they have 20 or less, they're killed instantly. Things like that.
The reason this is here is because the Sword of Cast is evil and tries to get you to do evil things. So when you take it into town, it makes you cast Divine Word at peasants.
Oh, it just kills like an entire
Yeah,
room
any
of
number
them.
of creatures
Walk
you can
into a
see
bar.
within range.
That
And the
would
range
be-
is 30 feet, and it's a bonus action. Oh, but because it's through
It's-
here, it needs to
It's
be
an action, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But still, I'm sorry that you can only kill your entire bar of peasants as an action, not as a bonus action, Ellie.
Of course, none of that's actually in the stat block. I made it up because I thought it was funny. But if you're the DM, do it every
The
time this
Divine
happens.
Word. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't specifically call out. It makes you use Divine Word, but like, I mean, it is a sentient magic item that tries to corrupt you and evil, cast Dominate Monster on you, and make you do horrible, horrible things. So, yeah, it's kind of there.
Yeah, so as mentioned, it is sentient. It's sentient chaotic evil weapon with an intelligence of 15, wisdom of 13, charisma of 16, and it has searing and dark vision. That's all that. But the personality part is what I wanted to get to. The sword's purpose is to bring ruin to Vecna. Killing Vecna's worshippers, destroying the Lich's work, and foiling his machinations all help to fulfill this goal. The Sword of Cast also seeks to destroy anyone corrupted by the eye and hand of Vecna. The sword's obsession with these artifacts eventually becomes a fixation for its wielder. So that's probably the important part. I don't think it's going to tell you to just go into bar and kill people unless
gonna
it's
do
a bunch
that.
of Vecna cultists, or even just like a whisper that maybe one person in there is a Vecna cultist and says just, well, if you kill everybody in the room, we can do this right now, real easy.
Right.
Kill everybody in the room. The one who survives is probably the one who's worshiping Vecna, and we need to kill them next.
And there's a whole weird bathed in blood thing up in its flavor. If the sword isn't bathed in blood within 1 minute of being drawn from its scabbard, its wielder must make a DC 15 charisma saving throw. On a success, the wielder takes 3d6 psychic damage. On a failed save, the wielder is dominated by the sword as if by the dominate monster spell, and the sword demands that it be bathed in blood. The spell effect ends when the sword's demand is met. So it could also do that.
You might end up killing a bar full of peasants regardless.
Yeah. It's a really tricky sword to give your party. This is very much, end of campaign stuff.
And I've actually seen it done in the first Critical Role campaign. It doesn't have this exact sword because it is super strong, but I believe it has the Matt Mercer gives one of the players a sword similar to this. And it has that mechanic of needing to be bathed in blood once it's drawn and everything. And that part actually did serve for a lot of interesting role play and such, or choices to be made of like, do I even want to use this weapon this fight? Because if it ends too quickly, shit gets real, and I don't know if I want to mess with that.
Right.
So yes, this is a scary one to give your party. It's always scary to give a +3 sentient magic weapon to your party, but this one in particular can turn bad real fast.
Yeah. It's no Black Razor, though.
No, it's not legitimately busted from just like all mechanical standpoint.
Right.
So either way, if it's a shorter adventure like the Vecna dossier is, then I think it makes perfect sense to give this sword. Otherwise, consider it. The last 2 magic items are the Hand and the Eye of Vechna. My throat is starting to go. Ellie, please read some stuff for me.
Yeah. This is another one where these 2 magic items existed before this official dossier came out. And again, the flavor in it is kind of under the assumption that Vecna is dead, and this is all that has remained of him. Basically, you can find them together or separate. To attune to them, you replace the appropriate body part. You have to gouge out your eye and then pop the eye in, and it becomes your working golden eye. Same with a hand. You got to chop off your hand, and then you push that up to your now stump, and it fuses on and becomes your hand. Just like everything else around Vecna in the sort of cast, it's evil. I don't remember if it forces your alignment change. I think it does.
It does. Neutral evil.
Yeah. Forces your alignment change to neutral evil. These also both have the random properties again, which we're not going to talk about. But then the specific one's the property of the eye. You have true sight. You can use an action to see if you were wearing an X-ray ring of X-ray vision. You could kind of assume what that does based on the name. You can have this effect as a bonus action. And the eye is 8 charges. You can use an action to expend 1 or more charges to cast one of the following spells, which is spell saving DC, Clairvoyance, Crown of Madness, Disintegrate, Dominate Monster, or Eye Bite. The eye regains 1d4 expended charges daily at dawn. Each time you cast a spell from the eye, there's a 5% chance that Vecna tears your soul from your body, devours it, and then takes control of the body like a puppet. If this happens, you become an NPC under the DM's control. So that's a roll of a 1 on a d20. How often do you feel like you roll 1s on d20s? All the time.
Free disintegrate, though.
Free in quotation marks.
Yeah.
A little asterisk at the top right.
Yeah. You can do it twice a day. I didn't specify the charges, but like disintegrate takes 4 charges, and there's varying degrees of that. So the eye that's something to give to an NPC.
Yeah.
And you need to come off as an NPC as this mysterious golden eye who seems to have access to magic you don't think they should.
That sounds about right.
I think that's the cool way to use it. It doesn't really help you at all in the Vecna fight.
If you have it,
neither one of these, other than just the blank mechanical benefits. There's nothing written into it where... Okay, and then the hand, also, again, your alignment changes to neutral evil, and then you gain the following benefits. Your strength score becomes 20 unless it's already higher. Any melee spell attack you make with the hand, and any melee weapon attack made with a weapon held by it, deals an extra 2d8 cold damage on a hit. And then it has 8 charges, same thing with spells, DC 18, Finger of Death, Sleep, Slow, Teleport. It gains 1d4 daily at dawn, and each time you cast a spell from the hand, it casts Suggestion Spell on you with a spell save DC of 18, demanding that you commit an evil act. The hand might have a specific act in mind or leave it up to you. That one's more reasonable.
That is a little bit more than your soul getting ripped apart. Yeah, I would say
right,
so.
And taken over by Vecna, yeah.
I also love the fact that it's just demanding you commit an evil act. Like, because that can just mean so many different things.
Right. So that one's kind of neat. Again, it makes you neutral evil. I think most parties would not mess with this thing. They would try and destroy it. But if you attune to both, then you get extra benefits. So you're immune to disease and poison. Using the eye's X-ray vision never causes you to suffer exhaustion. You experience premonitions of danger unless you are incapacitated. You can't be surprised. If you start your turn with at least 1 hit point, you regain 1d10 hit points. If a creature has a skeleton, you can attempt to turn his bones to jelly with the touch of the hand of Vecna. You can do this one, always makes me laugh if the creature has a skeleton.
Yeah.
You can do so by using an action to make a melee attack against a creature you could reach, using your choice of your melee attack bonus for weapons or spells. On a hit, the target must succeed on a DC 18 con save or drop to 0 hit points. It's just insane. And then just to round it out, you could use an action to cast Wish. The property can't be used again until 30 days passed. So getting both is just insane. Again, that's like boss material. An NPC gets both. I know it's not specifically with fighting Vecna, which is how this whole conversation an hour and a half ago started, but you could run a campaign where you are trying to stop the big bad evil guy from obtaining the hand and the eye of Vecna. You're trying to chase him down and get to him before.
Yeah, or they already have, and
Right.
that is the fight at the end,
Right.
or I won't even say the very end, because this can all lead to Vecna being the final fight.
Totally.
There's a lot you can do if depending on how long you want the campaign to go.
Right. There are special rules to destroying these. If the Eye of Vechna and the Hand of Vecna are both attached to the same creature, and that creature is slain by the Sword of Kos, both the Eye and the Hand burst into flame, turn to ash, and are destroyed forever. Any other attempt to destroy the Eye or Hand seem to work, but the artifacts reappear in one of Vecna's many hidden vaults, where it waits to be rediscovered.
Could you imagine if your party was trying to kill it and like somebody accidentally killed the boss beforehand? It's like, oh, well, now we can't, like, either we have to put this on a person, we have to put the eye and the hand on them and then kill them, or we just have to accept that these artifacts are still going to be around.
Right. Yeah, that's where it starts getting to, like, so you keep it and try and protect it, but
Yeah, no,
kind
you
of
just
like
find
the One Ring type material, like starts trying to corrupt you and get you to use it.
No, you find somebody who's on death row. This is Middle Ages. They're hanging people for all sorts of things. And you go, all right, buddy, let's take your eye. Let's take your hand. We're going to put these on you. Stabby stab. And we're good.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't give him extra health or anything, so.
No. You get at least... It might be another fight, but it's not going to be as hard.
Right.
With just some
I
random
do like-
horse thief. Casting Disintegrate. It's like,
Yeah.
I told you not to do that. I told you not to do that.
We needed to get
We're
rid
the
of
good
them.
guys. Hold still.
Not that I would specifically say you could ever plan for this, but I could see if it's like the end of the campaign and the party learns this is how to destroy it. I could see a player character stepping up and being like, I need to sacrifice myself to get rid of these. If that's the type of character they are, then that's great. And I'm sure, like, just saying it out loud, it doesn't feel emotionally impactful, but I'm sure if that happened at the table after like an entire campaign, it would be very cool.
Sure. And I like the interplay between these three items: Sword of Kos, then the Eye and the Hand, where, especially if you go that route where like a party member stepping up to do it and have themselves killed, then another party member needs a Sword of Kos, the Sword of Kos, to do it, which very much works to try and corrupt the wielder and the user of it. And so to try and rid the world of these horrible, unspeakable, evil artifacts, you have to embrace them and use them and risk yourself for corruption. And I just think that's really
It's cool. It's very good.
And also they're set up in a way where you cannot destroy all three. So you need the Sword of Kos to destroy the Eye and the Hand. If you want to destroy the Sword of Kos, then the creature who's attuned to both the Eye and the Hand of Vecna can use the wish property of those to unmake the Sword of Kos.
Which is an interesting interaction. If you're fighting the bad guy with the hand and the eye with the Sword of Kos, you have like a first round, oh shit moment. Am I going to keep this sword?
That's a good point.
Because you get the wish, as we went over with the eye and the hand. So it's built in.
Yeah, so it just comes down to a charisma check. The creature must make a wish spell and make a charisma check contested by the charisma check of the sword.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. So it's really cool combinations, and you could definitely do a whole campaign around these three magic items. And I know we got way off topic of the recently released Vecna stat block, but it is all related. And you can absolutely tie this back in, where then something goes wrong through this process, and then Vecna himself rises again, and now you have to kill him and fight him. And there's a more likely chance it's going to be TPK and Eva wins out, that sort of stuff.
See, this is the stuff I really do want to see from, I won't just say new stat blocks, but just in general, there's so much flavor baked in here that even if you're not using it in the Forgotten Realm setting, there's a ton that you can do. I mean, you change the names around and you've got literally whatever you want to call it. But you can have entire campaigns around this. And we haven't even, we've barely opened up the one shot that they wrote. It's not like more than a couple sessions or something, right, Will? You read that.
It's one session at most. It is a 4-level tower.
Okay, great. So that is obviously very small, and you'd probably be throwing a whole lot of things at your party. And for the most part, they'd be like, I don't understand the lore of this at all, because we just talked for an hour and a half, mostly about lore. It'd take a while to divulge this all in a one shot.
Right.
But it just gives you so many tools to make a campaign. And I love that idea of having these magic items with all this history to them. We saw it with the Wand of Orcus and a couple of the other demon lords, maybe. But either way, it just feels like we could just keep talking about different ways to set this up. Yeah, we haven't even talked about low-level stuff for these kinds of setups. But there's cultists, there's other things you can do, rituals and whatever. A whole campaign is easy to say, and it's going to feel unique for whoever's doing it.
Yeah. This is making me come around on a long time ago when we were talking about keeping segment ideas going once we're out of multi-classes. One of you guys brought up discussing magic items, and I was kind of lukewarm on it. This discussion's making me want to revisit that. Like, okay, I think we could do that. Like, it's an episode on a magic item and us building a campaign around it.
All right. You heard it here first, people. New segment incoming next episode. No, sometime when we feel
but
like
we will be changing our branding. Monsters and magic items. All our social medias, the website, the podcast name, all different. You're gonna have to change it if you want to keep following.
No, we just do the corporate thing of it. We just go to M&M.
Oh,
that's like there's so many businesses where they're like an acronym like that. It's because when they were started, they were something longer, and then that's not super appropriate. So now we're just gonna make it an acronym, and hopefully no one questions what it actually stands for.
Well, luckily no one's gonna question it either way. It doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't.
But I think we're done.
Yeah.
So if you have ways that you'd use Vecna, feel free to leave a comment, or if you want to enter for a giveaway, maybe our giveaway to win some dice, your choice of dice from Metallic Dice Games, then
and they have good dice, and we usually put about a $30 limit on it, so it's going up beyond just like the resin dice, which are really nice, but you could get like
some metal dice
around there. Yeah,
they have stuff. Some cheaper gemstone dice. I don't know if it'll fall into that. I'll have rules in the description.
Yeah. We totally didn't wing this one.
Us? I'm offended, Ellie.
Winging it, not coming up with plans before. Yeah.
We decided on what we were talking about last night, and we decided on this giveaway 30 seconds before recording. All right? That is not winging it. That is foresight. Thank you all for listening, and thank you as always to our patrons. It is Ed G, Muddlewaite, Brian H, Craig A, Isaac M, Jeff W, Luca L, Star Shinobi, Vincent M, Bob F, Joe P, Rick D, Sensible D20, Tyler S, Adam A, Rob K, and Gray. No initial, just Gray. You all are awesome. One. It is, yeah. I think we had two new ones.
Yeah, that list's definitely getting noticeably longer.
I know.
Appreciate it. It's
You're awesome. And if you want your name read, that's the only thing we can guarantee. If you want your name read at the oh no, I missed one. Oh.
We don't even guarantee that.
No, I got it. It's Barents. There we go. Or B. Arents. I'm not sure. Either way. And B. Arents, you're also awesome. If not more awesome. Because this time I forgot to say your name. But if you want to support the show, you can head on over to monstermulticlass.com/support, where you can find all of our affiliates, including Metallic Dice Games and a bunch of others, and as our Patreon, where we almost always give you access to episodes a day-ish early. Man, hard guidelines. aren't our thing. Thank you for listening.
Yeah,
I really had fun recording this one.
I did too. A lot longer than I thought it would be. But yes,
Yeah.
this was a good episode. So yeah, thank you for watching.